All right, welcome to this high-yield explainer on personality disorders. We're going to focus on the essential, safety-critical information you absolutely need to know, both for your clinical practice and for the exam.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by building a really strong foundation. Then we'll visually map out the disorder clusters to make them stick. We're going to put a big spotlight on the high-risk group you'll see the most. Clarify your critical role as the nurse, and then we'll put it all to the test with a clinical decision point.
Let's dive right in. We're going to start with the one fundamental concept you have to understand to get any NCLEX question on this right. This is really the why behind everything else.
Let's use a visual metaphor to make this click. I want you to think of a personality disorder like a suit of rigid, heavy iron armor. This armor, it was probably forged way back in life, maybe from trauma or genetics, and it was meant to be a form of protection. But the problem is, now it's stuck. It's so inflexible, it actually prevents any normal movement or adaptation to life's challenges.
And because that armor is so rigid, it causes real, measurable problems. For the NCLEX, you have to remember this isn't just a quirk. Nope, it's a clinical diagnosis, and it requires major dysfunction in at least two of these four areas: the way they think, the way they feel, their relationships, or their impulse control.
Now, that lack of insight, that is absolutely critical for you as the nurse to understand. It's the reason why these clients often truly don't see their own behavior as the problem. From inside their world, everyone else is genuinely the source of all their pain, and that's a core feature of the disorder.
Okay, now let's map out the three personality disorder clusters. The key to telling them apart on an exam isn't about memorizing endless lists of traits. It's about understanding the core motivation that's driving the behavior of each group.
This visual right here makes the difference so clear. So on your mental whiteboard, I want you to sketch a fortress for Cluster A. This is your odd, eccentric group who really prefer to be isolated. Now for Cluster C, sketch a turtle hiding in its shell. This is the anxious, fearful group. They want to connect, but they're just paralyzed by fear.
Okay, pay close attention here because this is a classic NCLEX trap. Both schizoid and avoidant clients are isolated, right? But the reason why is totally different. It's all about their motivation. The schizoid client genuinely has zero desire for relationships. The avoidant client, on the other hand, desperately wants to connect, but is just way too terrified of rejection to even try.
Now we're zooming in on the most volatile and, honestly, the most highly tested group, Cluster B. This includes the dramatic, emotional, and erratic disorders, and they're tested so heavily because their behaviors create the highest risk for safety, both for themselves and for everyone around them.
I want you to think of Cluster B as an emotional roller coaster going at max speed with absolutely no brakes. This leads to these wild emotional swings, really impulsive actions, and eventually explosive behavioral crashes. Safety is always your number one concern here.
Understanding splitting is completely non-negotiable for borderline personality disorder. It's an unconscious defense mechanism where the client just can't see any gray areas. People are either all good or all bad. So one minute, you're the best nurse ever because you brought them a warm blanket. The next, you're the worst nurse in the world because you enforced a simple boundary. This black and white thinking is what drives so much of that interpersonal chaos.
This one is just pure recall and apply for the exam. It's a guaranteed question. The behaviors might look the same, but you cannot diagnose antisocial personality disorder in a minor. Before they turn 18, the diagnosis is conduct disorder, period.
So when you're faced with this kind of emotional intensity, what is our role? Well, it's not to fix the client. Our job is to be a lighthouse, a consistent, predictable source of safety and boundaries.
And the key takeaway here is that lighthouse analogy. A client's emotional world can be a chaotic storm. Now, a lighthouse doesn't jump into the water to fight the waves, right? It stays firm, it stays consistent, and it's predictable, providing a safe guide from a solid foundation. And for us, that means consistent boundaries.
And this is so vital to remember. There is no pill that can cure a personality disorder. That's why psychotherapy is the frontline treatment. For BPD, the absolute gold standard is dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. It directly teaches clients the skills they're missing, things like distress tolerance, mindfulness, and how to regulate their emotions.
Okay, let's pop into the communication lab. In this scenario, your main goal is to stay totally neutral. You have to address the safety issue without accidentally reinforcing the self-harm behavior or getting sucked into the client's attempt at splitting the staff.
So the wrong way validates their splitting and just reinforces the behavior. But the therapeutic way, it's always matter of fact. You address the immediate physical need, safety first, without giving any emotional reinforcement. And then you gently redirect the client to process their own triggers.
Let's make this crystal clear for the exam. Circle this, highlight it, put a giant star next to it. Medications are strictly for managing symptoms like aggression, anxiety, or depression. They do not treat the underlying personality disorder itself.
All right, it's time for our final decision point. Let's pull everything we've talked about together with a next-gen NCLEX-style scenario. Your focus here should be on boundaries, safety, and how to manage the therapeutic environment.
Okay, read this one carefully. The question isn't just about what the client is doing, it's about the nurse's internal emotional response. What is happening inside the nurse?
Think like the NCLEX. Before you act, you have to assess. So what is the very first thing the nurse must do to keep that environment therapeutic and safe for everyone involved? And here it is. This is the why behind the correct answer: countertransference. It's the clinical term for when a client's behavior triggers an unconscious emotional reaction in you. Recognizing this in yourself isn't just about being professional, it is a critical safety issue.
So, the crucial point, the bottom line, is that professional, safe nursing care begins with self-awareness. You absolutely cannot effectively manage the client until you have first identified and managed your own emotional reactions. You have to assess yourself first.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most important question. How will you manage your own emotional responses out in the real world? Because let's be honest, mastering this content isn't just about passing a test. It's about becoming a safer, more self-aware, and ultimately a much more effective nurse.